Ever really stop to think, like really think about what's going on inside an animal's head?
It's a question people have been asking for a very long time.
Yeah, like when you see a squirrel burying a nut, is that just pure instinct? Or is there something more there, like some kind of thought process or even, dare I say, feelings?
It's a fascinating area of study, and today we are diving into the deep end of animal consciousness.
And we're not just asking if animals have consciousness anymore.
No, scientists are way past that now.
Exactly. Today we're talking about how that consciousness evolved and how it actually works in different species.
And for this deep dive, we are joined by the work of philosopher Walter Veit.
Oh, I like Walter Vett.
His book, A Philosophy for the Science of Animal Consciousness, tackles some of the really big questions here. Like, for example, why does consciousness even exist in the first place?
Yeah, good question. It's kind of extra, isn't it? Like, bacteria seem to get along just fine without overthinking things. Why would something as complex as consciousness even evolve?
Well, Veit says it's all about problem solving.
Problem solving.
He calls this idea the pathological complexity thesis.
Pathological complexity.
Oh.
Okay, I like the sound of that. What does it mean?
So basically, Veit's argument is that consciousness, just like developing sharp claws or camouflage, gives organisms a survival advantage.
Okay.
It's a tool shaped by natural selection, just like any other evolutionary advantage.
I think I get where you're going with this, but
Yeah.
do you have an example?
Okay, so imagine you're an animal living way back in the Cambrian period,
Okay, way back.
540 million years ago.
540 million years. Got it.
This was a time of huge change. It was an explosion of new life forms, all competing and evolving more complex bodies, new ways of moving, and facing a whole new set of predators and prey.
So life was getting a lot more complicated for those Cambrian critters, huh?
Exactly. Suddenly, it's not just about finding the nearest algae and munching away. These animals had to process information from their surroundings, make more complex decisions, and react quickly to all these new threats.
Sounds stressful. So I'm guessing this is where the pathological complexity comes in.
Bingo. And in this wildly complex environment, even a basic form of consciousness provides a big evolutionary advantage.
I see. So instead of just reacting instinctively, these animals are developing the ability to strategize,
Yeah,
to anticipate.
Exactly. Veit argues that these early forms of consciousness were all about making better, faster decisions to survive.
And to reproduce.
Of course, to reproduce. It's all about an organism's life history strategy.
Life history strategy. I like that. What does that look like in practice, though? Like, how would a trilobite's life history strategy differ from, say, a fish?
Well, that's what makes this all so fascinating. Because different species, they face such different challenges, right? So their life history strategy, how that plays out, totally different. And how their consciousness looks to an outsider, also totally different.
So we're not talking about, like, one type of consciousness that just suddenly appears in all animals equally.
Nope. Think of it more like a spectrum.
Okay.
Veit talks about 5 key dimensions of animal consciousness.
5.
Yeah. And every species falls somewhere on this spectrum depending on how they evolved.
5 dimensions of consciousness. This is already getting complicated. Okay, hit me with it. What are they?
All right. Well, the first 2 are pretty straightforward. First, you've got what Veit calls P-richness. Basically, how vivid and detailed are an animal's experiences. Like, imagine seeing the world in black and white versus seeing the full spectrum of color.
Okay, so some animals might perceive the world as more, like, muted compared to us.
Right, exactly. And then there's E-richness. That refers to the range of emotions an animal can feel. Like, can they feel joy, grief, jealousy even? Or is their emotional landscape more limited than that?
It's kind of wild to think about. Like, what would it feel like to actually experience the world through their senses and emotions?
It is. And that leads us to the third dimension, unity.
Unity.
Yeah, how integrated is an animal's experience of consciousness? Do they experience a smooth stream of thoughts and feelings like we do? Or is it more fragmented, like just going from moment to moment?
So some animals might have a more, like, choppy version of consciousness, like
Yeah.
a slideshow versus a movie.
That's a great way to put it. And now we're getting to the really wild ones, temporality and self-awareness.
Okay, lay it on me.
So temporality, it's all about how an animal experiences time. Can they think about the past? Can they anticipate the future? Or are they just stuck in the present moment?
Whoa. They have no concept of yesterday or tomorrow. That's kind of amazing. Makes you appreciate even our flawed human ability to think ahead.
I know, right? And then last but not least, we have self-awareness. This is the big one. Does an animal recognize itself as an individual, separate from its environment, separate from other individuals?
Like that classic mirror test. You hold a mirror up to an animal and see if it recognizes its own reflection.
Exactly. For a long time, passing that test was considered the gold standard for proving self-awareness. But Veit and a lot of scientists now are challenging that idea.
Really?
Yeah, they're pointing out that different animals might express self-awareness in ways that we don't immediately recognize. Like, just because they don't recognize themselves in a mirror doesn't mean they don't have some sense of self.
So how do we study these different dimensions of consciousness in animals then? It's not like we can just ask them what they're thinking.
Well, that's the challenge. And Veit talks about some seriously cool research that's being done. You mentioned the mirror test, which some primates, dolphins, even magpies have passed. But there's another test, a variation on the mirror test, that's given us some really surprising results.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What's this other test?
It's called the mark test.
The mark test. Okay, how's that work?
So with the mark test, you basically put a mark on an animal somewhere they can't normally see it.
Sneaky.
Right. And then you give them access to a mirror.
Okay, I'm seeing where this is going. So if they touch the mark after seeing the reflection,
It suggests that they have some level of self-awareness.
because they have to connect the dots that the creature in the mirror is them, and that whatever's on the creature is also on them. So who's passing this test besides the usual suspects? Give me the juicy gossip.
Get this, the cleaner wrasse,
Wait, what? The little fish.
the fish.
The ones that clean parasites off bigger fish.
Yeah.
Those guys have self-awareness.
Well, in the study, they use a colored gel mark. Totally harmless. And the wrasse that tried to scrape it off, they only did so after seeing themselves in the mirror.
No way. That is wild. Makes you wonder how many other animals are a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Right.
Like maybe we're just not smart enough to figure out how they experience the world.
That is a very good point. And that actually reminds me of another fascinating thing Veit talks about. Unihemispheric sleep.
Unit, huh? Okay, now you're just using big words to make me feel dumb. What is unihemispheric sleep?
It's when animals can literally sleep with only one half of their brain at a time.
You're kidding.
No,
So one half of their brain is completely asleep and the other half is awake.
pretty much.
How is that even possible?
Well, it seems to be a pretty neat trick that some animals have evolved.
Like who? Which animals do this?
So seals, dolphins, some birds.
Birds too. Wow.
And it's not just for, like, catching a few extra winks. That half of the brain can stay alert for predators or even keep an eye on things like, bodily functions.
So they're like half asleep, half awake. It's like a biological superpower.
Right. And it really makes you question our understanding of consciousness. Like, if one half of your brain can be out cold while the other half is aware, what does that say about how their consciousness actually works?
Yeah, makes you wonder if they're experiencing two separate streams of consciousness at the same time. The possibilities are kind of endless, really. And speaking of mind-blowing animal abilities, what about corvids?
Corvids. Oh, you mean crows and ravens. Yeah, they're incredible. The research on corvid intelligence is just off the charts.
Well, I heard they can actually time travel.
Haha, time travel. Not quite. But they do show some pretty convincing signs of something called mental time travel.
Okay, so what is mental time travel? And how do crows and ravens do it?
Basically, it means being able to plan for the future, but not in a simple, instinctual way. We're talking about real, thought-out planning.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, scientists have observed them hiding food, pashing it for later. But here's the kicker. They'll actually choose to hide certain types of food based on what they think they'll need later.
Whoa. You're saying they're thinking, okay, tomorrow I might need some high-protein snacks, so I better stash these crickets.
It's really like that, which means they have to have at least some awareness of themselves existing in the future. That's a pretty complex thing to wrap your head around, and it kind of blurs the line between simple instinct and something closer to, like, foresight, even.
It's amazing. It really is. This whole deep dive has me looking at the animal kingdom in a whole new light.
Me too. It's incredible to think about all the things we're still learning about animal consciousness. And it really challenges us to rethink our place in the world and how we treat other creatures.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. Well, there you have it, folks. Another deep dive down, and wow, I feel like my brain got a serious workout. From fish recognizing themselves in mirrors to crows planning their future meals, it's clear that the animal kingdom is full of surprises for those willing to look. Until next time, keep those minds curious.